Judge Abdul Karim Pharaon, who is the Justice of the Supreme Court of Jordan, and he received his Supreme Court appointment in May 2005. He has represented Jordan in conferences and seminars all around the world, presenting legal and judicial topics relating to Jordanian laws and Islamic Sharia. During his legal career, he served on the Court of Cassation at the Court of Appeals in Amman, Jordan. Prior to that, he was in private practice, where he represented many international and national firms, corporations, and individuals in civil, commercial, and business matters. He managed the legal affairs at Bendix Field Engineering, a contractor to the U.S. Corps of Engineers, which later merged with Allied Signal, in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. He's a faculty member and a member of the advisory board of the ABA CELI Institute in Prague, Czech Republic, and has participated in teaching programs for judges from both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also on the advisory board of the International Association for Court Administration. Born in Bethany, a suburb of Jerusalem, he received an LLB from Damascus University in Syria. Pharaon and his wife are the parents of 5 children, 2 boys, both of them lawyers, and 3 girls who are all married, and they have 8 grandchildren. Please join me in welcoming today Justice of the Supreme Court Abdul Karim Pharaon to the Kennedy Center.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and let me, or allow me, to greet you with our Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's peace upon you, all of you. And let me, and allow me, to have a short prayer with you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sorry. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Thank you, God, the merciful God, for having me and my colleagues here today to attend and speak to these distinguished men and women. And thank you, God, for having us safe to this land. It's a holy land because it's the land of Lord. Thank you, God, the merciful God, for having me healthy and for having you all healthy to be able to listen and exchange views. And let us all pray for the peace in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world. Thank you, God, for this gathering and for everything you gave to us. Amen. The word, let me start with the meaning of Islam. The word Islam means peace, and the greeting of Islam is Assalamu alaikum, as I just mentioned a little bit earlier, and it is peace upon you. And when the word, the religion itself means peace, and the greeting which we daily exchange several times with everybody, anybody you meet, whether you know or you don't know, you should say Salamu alaikum, which means peace upon you, and you ask the peace for that person. Let me start with a short definition of the Muslim faith. This Muslim faith is based on belief in one God and the message of his prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The daily prayers by which we connect to our Creator, the Ramadan fast in which we resist and discipline the desires of the body, the zakat charitable tax by which we help others, and the Hajj pilgrimage to God's house, Mecca, which represents the unity of the nation and is performed by those who are able. These obligations regulating human behavior in all its dimensions have created a strong and cohesive nation and a great civilization. That's Islam. Equally important, they reflect deep principles that are needed for humanity's own good: unity of the human race, equal rights and obligations, peace, security, social equality, the honoring of pledges, neighborliness and respect for others, and the protection of belongings and property. Islam's principles also provide common ground among different faiths and peoples. The origin of divine religions is one, and Muslims believe in all messengers of God. Denying the message of any of them is a deviation from Islam. This furnishes a wide platform upon which peoples of different faiths can meet together with respect for others' ideas and faiths, and act in common in the service of a human society. Islam honors every human being without distinction of color, race, or religion. Islam also affirms that Muslims, when spreading the call of God, are called to act gently on earth. The Quran says, "Invite to the way of the Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in ways that are best and most gracious." Because the Islamic mission is based on reason, Muslims are to shun Islam, clarify that its message is to bring mercy to all peoples. The Quran says, "We sent thee not save a mercy for all creatures." Prophet Muhammad, peace be unto him, emphasized the concept of compassion and tenderness in Islam when he said, "Mercy from the most merciful is bestowed on those who have mercy on others, and those who have mercy on creations of God on earth. The Almighty in the heavens will have mercy on you." Islam calls for treating others as one desires to be treated. It urges tolerance and forgiveness, qualities that elevate human life. The Quran states the following: "The recompense for an injury is an injury equal thereto in degree. But if a person forgives and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from God." And states also, "Nor can goodness and evil be equal. Evil with what is better then will be between whom and thee was hatred, become as it were thy friend and intimate. Islam calls for treating others justly, safeguarding their rights and possessions. Islam upholds human life. There is to be no fighting against non-fighters, no assault on civilians and their properties, on children in their mothers' laps, on students in the schools, on older men and women. To assault the life of a human being is equivalent to assaulting the right to life of all. And this is one of the gravest sins, for life is the basis for the continuation of humanity. This is the faith that made historic advances in science, scholarship, and intellectual life, achievements that empowered a great civilization in whose achievements non-Muslims had their share, and which became the vehicle to bring knowledge for the West as well. And yesterday, with Mr. Donald Peterson, we were talking about this aspect. And to acknowledge that, he started a project about 10 years ago in translating the big works of the Islamic doctors and engineers and scientists. Islam calls on Muslims to demonstrate tolerance and delight in human life. It opposes extremism, exaggeration, and intransigence. These phenomena are veils against right thinking. They conceal the repercussions of one's actions and encourage a reckless disregard for religion, reason, and civilized behavior. Indeed, Islam rejects extremism as a deviation from true faith and a form of injustice. Furthermore, it is not a trait that characterizes a particular nation. It is an operation that has been experienced by all nations, races, and religions. We as Muslims denounce extremism today, just as our forefathers relentlessly did throughout Islamic history. Time after time, they insisted on the importance of one clear truth: the ends do not justify the means. We speak this truth again today. Islam is a religion of ethics that seeks what is good for people in the entire world. Its principles are those of honor. The means of spreading Islam are ethical means, and Islam can only be defended through ethical means. The foundation of relations between Muslims and others is peace. In Islam, war is only justified by necessity and challenges. No fighting is permissible when others pose no aggression. Even then, the duty of Muslims is to treat others with justice and benevolence. On religious grounds, on moral grounds, we denounce the contemporary concept of terrorism, which is associated with wrongful practices wherever they come from, including assaults on peaceful civilians, killing prisoners and the wounded, unethical practices such as the destruction of buildings, like what happened in 9/11, and ransacking cities. These despotic attacks on human life transgress the law of God, and we denounce them, as the Quran says the following, I quote, "Take not life which God hath made sacred, except by way of justice and law." No human whose heart is filled with light could be an extremist. We decry the campaign that portrays Islam as a religion that encourages violence and institutionalizes terrorism. Throughout history, extremism has caused the destruction of great civilizations. The tree of civilization wilts and hearts close when malice takes hold. It is an evil aligned to Islamic values of moderation and tolerance. Today, we call on the international community to work seriously on implementing international law and ensuring respect for UN conventions and resolutions, ensuring that there are no double standards, that injustice is uprooted, and that people's rights are returned. Achieving this will contribute to uprooting the causes of violence, exaggeration, and extremism. The Islam that we are honored to belong to calls on us to be involved in modern society and contribute to its progress. To achieve that, Muslims reach out in brotherhood to all those who love justice, reason, and righteousness. Islam guides us to express earnestly the realities of our lives and to share the soundness of our faith and beliefs. This is God's call for coexistence and piety. Thank you all. I will accept now any questions. I understand that we have until 3:50, and I would ask our colleague here to moderate the questions.
We have a roving microphone. We ask that you just please raise your hand, and we'll bring the microphone to you if you have a question. Are there any questions?
Question back here. What is Islam doing within, within Islam in order to combat those who are the extremists, who tend to present this negative image to the world of Islam?
As you are well aware, the Muslim people is about 1.5 billion people around the world. They are not a school, they are not a university, so they don't have one head. So if you have one extremist here or there, there is no authority, like in any religion, there is no authority at all which is centralized in one place, which can say, hey, you are extremist, come here and I'm going to put you in jail or whatever. That's left actually to each government in this whole world. In Jordan, we are dealing with this subject in teaching the preachers to be a good preachers and not to teach people the extremism in their lives. And that's, I do call for everybody, every state, to have such an institute which teaches preachers who preach in the mosques every day and every Friday, especially Fridays, to teach those preachers the right face of Islam, which is the kindness, tolerance, and love others. To be an extremist, that's not of Islam. That's all what we can do, you know, to have special institutes to teach those preachers who teach others. Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned before that we should find the root cause of the violence. What, in your opinion, is the root cause, and what should be done about it?
I believe that the root of the terrorism is two things. It's poverty and the lack of education. This is one side, and on the other side, you know, I believe that terrorism in general and extremism is a kind of a react. It's not an act. In other words, if someone is coming to occupy a piece of land that is not his, what do you expect the inhabitants of that piece of land or territory would do? They would resist. And as long as the resistance is going to those who are fighting there, the soldiers, the fighters, whoever having a weapon, I would call that resistance. But if it goes beyond that, to kill the civilians, the boys in their schools, the people in their churches or mosques, that is terrorism. What we see in Iraq, for example, of killing lots of civilians in their mosques, they are praying, either they are Shiite or Sunni, and you find a bombed car, just getting into that mosque and bombing the people who are praying. That is terrorism. But when you, for example, in other places, find some organized people who are recognized by Geneva Conventions, in other words, wearing certain uniforms to be recognized when they walk in the streets, I would call that a resistant in the limit if they keep their resistance against those who are fighting them. Yes.
You said that Islam rejects extremists, but they say you hear them and they're talking about how what they do is supported in the Quran. Are they making it up? Are they interpreting things wrong? Or how do they come up with that statement?
As in each religion, there are some general phrases, general statements. Religion did not come, and when I say religion, I'm talking about Islam, Christianity, Judaism, or any other religion, did not come for a certain era, did not come for a certain period of time. This religion came for the following 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. A religion comes for all the period of time to come. So it's general, or it's common to find some general phrases in that religion which deals with a subject in general way, not specifically for this purpose. And you will have some people all over the ages who will interpret those general phrases the way to serve their purposes. The Holy Quran is there, and it's clear, and it's available for everybody to read. And each one who has a bright brain can read and see what that means, what this phrase or that phrase means. So when they adopt a certain interpretation and say that this is Islam, that does not mean that we should go and believe them right away. The right thing is the Holy Book is available all over the world, in all over the languages, in all the languages. So you can pick up the book and see what does it say. You will find that the Holy Quran, Islamic religion, will never ever call for violence. It calls for violence as a react, not as an act. Fight the people who are fighting you. Defend yourself, defend your family, defend your property. Do not attack. And I don't have the book in front of me, but I can point out lots of phrases in this meaning. And anybody, if he goes to the internet, can find the Quran in English language available and can, you know, in a little search, can find what I'm saying is true. Yes.
I just wanted to thank you for being here today. And,
Thank you.
My question is, in the media, we see all the extremists speaking out. How come those who aren't more educated, who are more influential, especially in Western countries or in countries throughout the Middle East who have chances for education, why aren't they speaking out? Why are they letting the extremists be the ones on the news, on the TV, and giving the face of Islam that many of us Westerners see?
Well, I assume you are referring to Al Jazeera. And as you know, Al Jazeera or any other television station nowadays is owned by a company or, you know, just personal property. And you cannot control it. It's the freedom of expression. You cannot say to this television station, do this or do that nowadays. They will sue you. And if they come to my court, I will rule in their favor, because it's the freedom of speech, freedom of opinion. And this is protected by all the modern constitutions. So it's not wrong, in my opinion, to hear the opinion and the opposite opinion. It's okay, let everybody speak. But should I believe everyone who speaks? You know, I have my own brains, and I should judge what's right and what's wrong. For example, in the Mormons religion, you have a lot of restrictions, as we do in the Islamic religions. When the preacher on the Sunday says this is prohibited or this is not prohibited, and you go to the market downtown, and you find all the prohibited items, it's up to you to buy or not to buy, to use or not to use, to take or not to take. So it's self-emotion that makes you do this or not do that. And when you hear something on the media, either on television, Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, CNN, NBC, Fox News, whatever, it's not necessary that you believe everything you hear. God gave us a very precious piece of meat, which is called the brains. And we have to use it. And whatever we are using, we are not using maybe 1 on 100 or on 1,000 of the capacity of that brain. So, yes.
A question from the hallway. First of all, thank you very much for your time. Secondly, I understand that you were involved in the teaching or training of the judges in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was wondering if you could possibly give us a quick insider's perspective of the progress being made in the judiciary fields over there.
Well, that doesn't relate to the subject, but no problem. There is ABCly established. Anybody aware of what's ABCly? Or shall I explain what's that? ABA is, you know what's ABA? American Bar Association. Okay? So they made a project in Europe for the Eastern European countries, and it's situated in Prague, Czech Republic. And they call it the International Judicial Institute. It's specially to teach the judges from those countries, mainly from Eastern Europe, who've been connected one way or the other to the previous Soviet Union. But the board of the institute found out that some other judges from some other countries need to be taught as well. And after the war in Iraq, we found out that the Iraqi judges are maybe the most people to be in need, who are in need for such training. We do not train legal lessons like in civil procedures or criminal procedures or civil law, the codes. We do not teach that. We train them on the conduct of judges, the conduct or certain training lessons on certain things which they do not get in the universities or in the law schools. My experience with the Iraqi judges, including those judges, 2 of them, whom you've seen on TV screens trialing Saddam Hussein. I spent 2 weeks with each of them in Prague. We trained them on several things. And this is why one of them was a good judge and the other was not. He did not get enough training. Anyway. Or maybe we were not that good. The judges attended those courses were of the Supreme Court of Iraq and Afghanistan as well, and from the Court of Appeals and Prosecution Department. We found out that those guys were completely ignorant of the outside world. You talk to someone who is about 60 years old, my age. Well, I have to admit that I'm 60. And he's never been out of the city of Baghdad. That's a shame. To talk to someone from Afghanistan and he's 75 and he's never been out of Kabul. He knows nothing. Some of them, believe me, my friends, do not know how to use a knife and a fork when they eat. So our job was to get them out of that close circumstances or that close kind of life, dark life, which they were living in. One of the Iraqi judges, that was a sad accident, passing through the streets of Prague, and they have those electric trains, the trams, and the tram is from the Soviet era. It weighs maybe, 100 tons or I don't know how much. It's made of this solid steel. And this judge was passing the railway and could not see even the train. And the train hit him, and he's been in the intensive care for about 3 months. Luckily, he passed, the injury and got back to his family safe. But this is to show you that those guys under the regime of Saddam Hussein never seen anything, outside the village or the city they were living in.
What's the level of involvement between church and state, and do you think it's at a good level in Jordan, or it should be more or less?
The state and church has been separated not only in Jordan but in the whole world since the Middle Ages or after the Middle Ages, from the time we have this revolution of industry in all fields. And I bet everybody of you read a lot about this subject. But the Constitution of Jordan reads that Islam is the official religion of the state. That means the Islamic religion is the religion of the king and the for the official holidays and for everything, to observe Ramadan, and there are certain things beyond that. That does not mean, under no circumstances, that other religions in Jordan are not recognized. On the contrary, the percentage of Christians in Jordan, I would say, I don't have accurate statistics. 5? Okay, but my friend here says 5% of the whole population. I would say 7 to 8, but he says 5. Okay, fine. As long as I don't have anything to support my idea. So they have the whole freedom to practice their religion. Those 5%, according to my friend here, are not of one Christian religion. We have Catholics, we have Latin, we have Protestant, we have, you name it. The state recognizes so far 9 different Christian religions. And each religion of these has its own court for family status matters, like marriage, divorce, etc., custody, inheritance, allowance, the relation between the man and the woman, since it starts with marriage and ends with death or divorce. To give you an example about how Jordan treat those people, in the area of the Palace of Justice is located, and maybe Judge Wallace has visited that area and knows it. There is one mosque in that for Muslims, surrounded by 4 churches for different religions. So the 4 or 5% of Christians has or have 4 churches in 1 square 5 kilometers, or I would say 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers, and 1 mosque for Muslims, whom they represent 95% of the population. Moreover, the state of Jordan, the government of Jordan, observes the holidays of Christians, like Christmas, Easter, New Year, etc. And it is an official holidays for all the nation, not only for the Christians, the Christian citizens. So this tells you how we respect the people who are living with us. There is no difference between a Muslim or a Christian in front of the law. The Constitution says all citizens are equal, no matter what their race, color, religion, etc. Same paragraph which you read all over the world. So for Muslims and for Christians, in their family status matters, we have separate courts, and they do not come to our civil courts. And this is the relationship between the state and the church. You have your God, I have mine. Nobody cares about the other, so nobody bothers the other. Yes.
Thank you. I was wondering, in America...
May I drink?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Terrorism is such a new thing to many of us. We've never seen it in our...
The what?
terrorism is so new, especially with 9/11 only having been 5 years ago. What are some things that Jordan has done to counter terrorist threats and things in your country that you think America would be wise to adopt?
Mm-hmm. As I said, terrorism is a react for something. America or any other power in this world should look into others equally. Jordan itself was a victim of terrorism. We had some Iraqi people came from Iraq, and they were Muslims. They were Sunnis, as we are, and they blowed up 3 hotels of our finest hotels in the capital, Radisson Sass, the Hyatt, Grand Hyatt, and the Days Inn. The tragic thing was that there was a wedding going on at the Radisson Sass. And in a wedding ceremony, you know, there were about, the estimation was about between 700 to 1,000 people attending that ceremony. A man and his wife stepped in through, you know, all the security, which was not tight at that time, having the belts around them, and each one of them stood in a corner. The man blowed up his belt. Luckily, the woman tried to push the button, but it did not work. So when everything is finished, the bride and the groom were sitting on those 2 big chairs, you know, high, and they saw the blood in front of them, and their fathers, their mothers, their relatives are dead. What do you expect? You know, it's kind of a horror. And the lady left the place, ran to some people and says that she's kind of a refuge and asking for a refuge. And because she's Iraqi, the Jordanian people are very nice and kind, accepted her to stay with them. A day or 2 later, the lady, the owner of the house, wanted to sweep the house or clean it, so she was doing some cleaning under the bed where that lady was staying. And all of a sudden, she got this belt with all the explosive inserted in. She was terrified and called for the husband and for the people around her and brought the police. And they captured her, and she admitted the crime. Last week, the court sentenced that lady death penalty, but that sentence is subject to be appealed before the Court of Cassation, which is my court. And I think we're going to treat her the way she deserves. Yes.
My question is, I'm very familiar with, in certain regions, having like an international community, like in NATO or in the Pacific, they have the Pacific community. It seems like terrorism is a regional focus in the Arab countries. I was wondering, are there any international communities among the Arab countries that are working together to fight against terrorism or economic problems? And if there aren't, are there any plans to do so?
Well, I'm not a decision maker to start with. I'm just a judge. But I don't agree with you that terrorism is only in the Arab or Muslim world. Terrorists has no religion, has no nationality. They are the citizen of all the world. You could find a terrorist in America. And I give you an example. The guy who went to Oklahoma City and did what he did, and all of you know what he did. I can give you examples in Russia, give you examples in Chile, in Peru, Colombia, in Venezuela, in Canada, in Israel, in all over the world. So the bottom line is terrorism has no nationality, has no religion, could be of any religion, could be of any nationality. Unfortunately, the media, after 9/11, and because those terrorists who are working for Osama bin Laden are Muslims, the media started concentrating on Muslim and Arab world. But I can assure you the Muslims and the Arab world in general, they are very nice and kind people and treat people very nicely and kindly. And they, as I mentioned, reject terrorism and extremism. Go to Egypt, go to Jordan, to Syria, to anywhere in the world. But there is a lot behind calling these things. It's politics. And we do not want to go through that topic. Thank you. Yes.
We're running out of time, probably just a few more questions. One up here.
I was just wondering your opinion, what can be done not to combat extremists themselves, but the negative perceptions created by extremist acts? And conversely, what can America and the West do to counteract maybe negative perceptions that they've created in the Islamic world?
Well, I told you the main reason, in my opinion, for terrorism is poverty and the lack of education. So America, the European Union, the people who are rich, the people who have money, can contribute in building schools all over this area, can contribute in having factories, having people to work, have jobs. Once you have money and you have brains to think, which comes through the education, I don't think you will be thinking of terrorism. If you have a stomach full of food and a brain full of knowledge, you will not do anything like that. And let me talk something here about the late commander of Al-Qaeda who was killed in Iraq a couple of months ago, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. He's a Jordanian. Unfortunately, he's a Jordanian. And he came from a town to the northeast of Amman called Zarqa, and this is why he's called Zarqawi. I know the quarter where he lived, and I know the area where he was raised. I passed by it several times. It's the poorest part of the city. So if he got an education, a proper education, he did not pass the high school examination, which we have after the 12th year of high school, for 3 or 4 times. So you can tell what type of education the leader has. He's been in jail for 5 years, 7 years for theft and other crimes. And once he got out of jail, he started to talk about Islam, and he's representing Islam. How could a man like this, without any education, without any knowledge in his brain, represent a great religion and a great civilization like Islam? So if we can, the governments, the US government, the European Union, the Gulf states of Arabia, who has money, can contribute in building schools, universities, factories, find jobs for those people, you will find no extremism. That's, in my way, in my opinion, the way to solve this problem.
We have time for one more question. Final question. While she's bringing the mic over, just out of curiosity, how many of you have been to the Middle East or are from the Middle East? Show of hands. How many of you speak Arabic?
Thank you for coming again. My question has to deal with the education.
I see Palestine speaking Arabic.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.
My question has to deal with the education that organizations such as like Hezbollah and Hamas offer. And what kind is that education teaching them extremism, or is that a solid education that like that you would recommend to pull out of this extremism? Thank you.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not an expert on the Islamic movements such as Hamas and Hezbollah. What I know is what I learn from the TV, from the media, so I do not claim to know what kind of teachings they have. But you're talking about two different groups. The Hezbollah belongs to the Iranians, and the Hamas belongs to the Palestinians. One group is Sunni and the other group is Shia. So what kind of teachings each one of them has, that needs to go through their literatures, and as a judge, sorry, I did not have the time to go through that. Yes.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here, and thank you all for being here. And I'm really looking forward for more meetings with you if the opportunity will arise again. I enjoyed your questions very much, and you've been a great listeners. Thank you very much.